Fog swallows the valley. Then, Bert, the guy you ate, shreds the silence. 3 enemy guns vanish in fire before anyone can call for help. In the command room, every screen blinks the same impossible signal, an A-10C that doesn't exist on any roster. Identify that pilot. Colonel Halverson demands. The answer chills the room. Call sign, Raven 13. A name erased from the system 3 years ago after the mission she was never supposed to survive. And now, she's back. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. Fog clung to the Northridge Highlands, thick and unbroken. Then it came the tearing snarl of the GAU-8 Avenger. Bert! Chunks of earth erupted in the distance, shockwaves rolling through the valley. Down in the mud, Echo 2's soldiers looked up, stunned. A gray-green A-10C streaked just above the treetops, its silhouette barely visible in the mist. Engines growled low, steady a predator moving in for the kill. 15 minutes earlier, the air inside Western Combat Air Command's operations room had been heavy with tension. A massive map sprawled across the table, littered with red threat markers. Echo 2 was pinned at grid point K92, boxed in by enemy batteries, outnumbered 3-1. Colonel Richard Halverson stood over the map, jaw tight. 3 minutes before their artillery walks right over them, his intel chief warned. The colonel's gaze moved to the clock. There was no room for delays. Every option was collapsing. F-35s were grounded for maintenance. FA-18s were mid-refuel hundreds of miles away. On top of that, electromagnetic interference was cutting radar range to shreds. Half the airspace picture was static. The other half was guesswork. Ground support had already failed to punch through. From the corner of the room, a junior tech officer cleared his throat. "Sir, there's an A-10C pilot just outside the zone. She's ready to take orders." Halverson didn't even look up. "We don't need a flying tank," he said flatly. "I need jets that can get there fast." The dismissal hung in the air, sharp and final. A voice from radar broke the moment. "Contact single A-10 inbound. No flight plan, no clearance. Heading straight for K92. Heads turned toward the green sweep of the screen." "Who cleared it?" Halverson asked. "No one, sir. She just took off." The operator's voice was tight with confusion. "Put her on comms," Halverson ordered. Static hissed back across every frequency. "She's not responding," the comms officer said. The A-10's track line burned steady on the radar. Unwavering, she was cutting distance fast and low. "Get me an ID on that aircraft," Halverson snapped. The data clerk's hands flew over the console. A moment later, he froze. Call sign reads, Raven 13. A murmur rippled across the room. The name was more than familiar, it was supposed to be gone. That call sign was retired after Operation Winter Veil, the intel chief said quietly. Halverson's eyes narrowed. 3 years ago, the chief added, under unusual circumstances. Nobody needed the reminder of what unusual meant in military archives. The colonel leaned closer to the comms desk. "Patch me through. Now!" His voice carried the weight of command, but the air still felt cold. Raven 13. "This is WCAC Command," he said into the mic. "You are not authorized for this mission. Break off and return to base immediately." The only answer was the hollow hiss of static. He repeated the order, sharper this time. Still nothing. The operator shook his head. The signal was being ignored. On the big display, the A-10 icon edged past the perimeter of friendly control. She was minutes from Echo 2's coordinates. Halverson felt every eye in the room on him. "She's still coming," the radar operator reported. "Low altitude. Vector locked straight on target." The colonel's hand tightened on the console. This wasn't a rookie making a mistake. Whoever was in that cockpit knew exactly what they were doing. Somewhere beyond the fog and static, a lone pilot was bearing down on a battlefield, against orders, against every protocol the colonel had sworn to uphold. "Keep tracking her," Halverson said finally. His voice had lost its edge, replaced by something quieter, because he knew in 3 minutes, Echo 2 would either be gone or saved. Inside the cockpit, Aaron Calloway flicked a switch and cut every channel but one. Only the frequency for Echo 2 stayed open, the rest falling silent under her gloved hand. The low rumble of the twin General Electric turbofans filled the small space. Her visor reflected nothing but gray mist, ridgelines in the ghostly shapes of the Montana highlands. She knew this terrain. She had trained here years ago, memorizing every contour. Now that memory was her only navigation system. On the ground, Echo 2 huddled in the shallow trench they dug overnight. Mud clung to their uniforms, mixing with the smell of cordite and wet pine. A mortar round screamed in, throwing dirt over the wounded they were trying to drag to cover. 2 minutes, someone shouted over the din. The sound of enemy artillery being wheeled into position carried across the valley. They had no air cover. Not yet. Aaron dropped the A-10's nose, sliding along the face of a granite cliff. The terrain masked her from enemy radar, each maneuver hugging the landscape so tight the treetops scraped her wingtips. Her altimeter hovered just above 300 feet. In the WCAC command room, Colonel Halverson watched her track burn across the display. "She's entering the hot zone," the radar operator said. Halverson's jaw locked. Orders said stop her. Protocol said stop her. But Echo 2 had no more time to lose. "Clear to engage," he said, the words tight, knowing she didn't need his permission anymore. Aaron's voice came over Echo 2's net, calm, steady. "Echo 2, this is Raven 13. Mark enemy positions. I'm in visual." Static crackled around her words, the interference clawing at every syllable. She rolled the A-10 into her first attack run. Through the mist, 3 dark shapes emerged the enemy's artillery, spaced just far enough to avoid a single strike. She lined up the GAU-8 finger, tightening on the trigger. Bert! The cannon's 7 barrels spat a storm of depleted uranium rounds. The first battery erupted in a chain of orange fire, its crew scattering too late. She banked hard right, disappearing into the fog before counterfire could track her. Below, enemy spotters shouted and scrambled for shoulder-fired missiles. Aaron looped wide, circling low around a ridge, and came back from an unexpected angle. The second target came into view. She fired another microburst. Smoke and debris swallowed the gun crew, their weapons silenced in seconds. Her HUD blinked warnings. Man pads launch detected. A white trail cut the air behind her. She snapped the A-10 into a knife-edge turn, dropping altitude so sharply the valley floor blurred past her canopy. The missile streaked overhead, losing lock and spiraling into the hills. She steadied the aircraft, lined up the last target. The third artillery piece loomed through the fog, still pivoting toward Echo 2's position. One final burst, less than 2 seconds, and the weapon vanished in a geyser of dirt and fire. "Echo 2, all enemy artillery neutralized," she said. Her voice was matter-of-fact, as if she just called in weather conditions. Then she cut the transmission. In the command room, stunned silence held for a moment. 60 rounds, the weapons tech said. Eyes wide. That's all she used. 60 rounds, 3 targets. Impossible. Another officer muttered. "Not impossible," said the older A-10 veteran in the corner. "Just rare." Halverson leaned over the comms panel. "Raven 13 returned to base for debrief," he ordered. No answer. On radar, her icon veered northwest, altitude dropping until the track winked out completely. "She's gone," the operator confirmed. Terrain masking had swallowed her up again. On the ground, Echo 2's leader keyed the mic. "Base, be advised, 0 further casualties. We're moving to extraction, and tell whoever that pilot was. She saved every last one of us." Halverson didn't reply right away. In the dim hum of the command center, eyes lingered on the blank patch of sky where her signal had been. Somewhere beyond those ridge lines, Aaron Calloway was already a shadow among the clouds, and nobody knew when or if she would appear again. Colonel Halverson stood in the center of the operations room, the adrenaline of the rescue still lingering in the air. "Open the file on Operation Winter Veil," he ordered. The intel officer hesitated. "Sir, those files are classified, I'm aware." Halverson cut in. "Open them." A secure terminal was rolled over, its screen bathing the table in a cold blue glow. The room fell silent except for the rhythmic clatter of keys. Lines of text and mission logs filled the display. Images followed grainy photographs of frozen valleys and burning wreckage. A faint hum from the ventilation system was the only background sound. The report began with a map. A mixed squadron of fighters and A-10s had flown into hostile territory, relying on faulty intel. What was supposed to be light resistance turned out to be a wall of steel. The enemy had advanced surface-to-air missile systems positioned in hidden batteries. Electronic warfare units jammed every GPS and radio frequency. The flight went in blind and paid for it. In the first wave, 6 aircraft were shot down in under 10 minutes. 22 aircrew were scattered across 30 miles of frozen terrain. Command called off further operations, labeling the survivors unrecoverable. Halverson leaned in. What happened next? The intel officer clicked to the next section, a sudden spike in activity logs. It was the moment Erin Calloway made her choice. Without orders, she launched in her A-10C. No GPS, no comms, no AWACS guidance. Just a paper map in the cockpit and a head full of terrain memorized from training. She flew low, using canyons and ridgelines for cover. Each time she reached a cluster of survivors, she banked hard, putting the Thunderbolt between them and incoming fire. She shielded extraction teams like a moving wall of armor. 17 sorties in 8 hours, each one deeper into enemy territory than the last. Every return flight came back with bullet holes and scorch marks. The final trip was nearly fatal. Hydraulics gone. One engine coughing black smoke. She landed on a frozen highway 20 miles from base, skidding to a stop with sparks spraying from the landing gear. The aircraft was written off as a total loss. 18 people walked away alive. Halverson's gaze stayed on the image of her standing beside the crippled A-10 helmet under her arm. What was the disciplinary outcome, he asked. The intel officer's expression darkened. She was charged with disobeying direct orders. Given the choice to accept a formal reprimand or defend her actions and face dismissal, she refused to apologize. The quote was in the record, "I will not apologize for bringing people home alive." The court-martial ended her career. Her name disappeared from active rosters within a month. No forwarding address, no official postings. The screen changed to a new set of maps recent. 17 separate incidents over the last 3 years, all marked in red circles. Each was a rescue mission in a zone declared too dangerous for official operations. Each had the same anonymous element in A-10 appearing without notice, completing the extraction, then vanishing. 67 lives saved, 0 losses. The pattern was unmistakable. Halverson studied the map, his eyes moving between the red marks. "She's been listening," he said quietly. "To what?" Sir, the intel officer asked. "Our comms? The ones we stop answering?" He tapped a point on the map. "She shows up where we've already given up." A security officer shifted uncomfortably. "If she's accessing classified channels, that's a major breach." Halverson turned to him. "So is letting our people die when someone could reach them." The room stayed quiet. The colonel straightened, voice steady, effective immediately. "We establish Raven 13 protocol." "What exactly is that?" Sir, the comms chief asked. "A frequency, not in the official registry, monitored only when every other option is off the table." He looked around the table. "If she hears it, she'll come. And if she doesn't," someone asked from the back, "then no one could have helped anyway." Halverson said. The tone in his voice ended the discussion. On the big map, the red circles glowed under the overhead lights. Each one told the same story: a mission abandoned, a rescue completed, and now they had a way to call the ghost back. Halverson closed the file. "Make sure only the people who need to know." "No." The hum of the servers seemed louder now. Somewhere out there, Erin Calloway was still flying. No orders, no recognition, Just the sound of a distress call no one else would answer. 3 days later, the fog at Fairwater Auxiliary Airfield was so thick the runway lights glowed like muted lanterns. A single shape emerged from the mist, the squat, unmistakable silhouette of an A-10C Thunderbolt II. It rolled to a stop near the far edge of the tarmac, engines winding down into silence. By the time base security reached it, the cockpit was empty. No one had seen the pilot step out. On the pilot's seat, a folded scrap of paper waited. Halverson arrived minutes later, his coat collar pulled high against the damp air. He climbed the ladder himself, reached into the cockpit, and unfolded the note. No thanks needed. Just know they're still alive. The handwriting was sharp, deliberate, no signature, no call sign. But everyone knew. Echo 2's commander hand-delivered a small metal badge that afternoon, engraved with Raven 13, who arrives before radar. Halverson placed the badge carefully on the console inside the cockpit. Then he issued orders the aircraft was to be moved to Hangar 7. It would be treated not as evidence, but as a strategic reserve asset. Within days, word spread through the pilot community. They called it the Warthog Ghost, a machine that appeared only when no one else could make it. Some said it was luck. Others swore it was skill. No one questioned the results. Late one night, a perimeter guard reported seeing a lone figure near Hangar 7, a woman in a flight jacket, walking with steady purpose. By the time he reached the hangar, the figure was gone, leaving the faint scent of jet fuel in the cold air. The maintenance crew began noticing strange things. The A-10 in Hangar 7 was always spotless, perfectly tuned, even when no work orders were filed. Hydraulics cycled smoothly. Weapon mounts were greased. Avionics clean. No one could explain who was doing it, and Halverson never asked. He simply told his officers, "If it's ready, that's all that matters." Over the next several years, the Raven 13 call sign surfaced 12 more times. Each time, the situation was considered impossible. Each time, the impossible became real. An extraction from a mountain pass during a blizzard. A convoy pulled from an ambush in the desert, minutes before being overrun. A stranded reconnaissance team lifted from a jungle clearing, with enemy patrols closing in. In every case, there were no official orders, no flight plans, only witnesses who swore they'd heard the low growl of a warthog moments before the tide turned. At WCAC's headquarters, a small plaque was mounted on the main corridor wall. No names, no dates. Just the silhouette of an A-10 cutting through smoke, with the words, "For those who fly when others cannot." Pilots touched it in passing for luck before missions. Rookies asked about it in whispers. Veterans gave only the same answer. If you need to know, you'll find out. Halverson retired 2 years later, leaving the protocol in place. In his farewell remarks, he glanced once at the plaque. He didn't mention Raven 13 by name, but everyone understood. The day after his retirement, a new note appeared in the cockpit at Hangar 7. "Thank you for knowing some missions are bigger than the rules." It was signed only R13. Nobody knows where Aaron Calloway is now, but in the quiet corners of military aviation, one truth remains. When the frequency for Raven 13 goes out into the dark, someone will answer.